Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. The DJI Neo, such a cool little drone and so versatile. If you're in Canada and have bought one or are considering getting one, please watch this video to understand what Transport Canada regulations do and do not apply. Whether you're flying in, hand launch mode, regular controller mode, or using FPV goggles. I'll cover these cases, answer some common questions, and provide you with practical guidelines for safe and happy droning. Let's get into it. Drone regulations in Canada cover drones in 3 weight classes: those below 250 grams, those between 250 grams and 25 kilograms, and drones over 25 kilograms. The weight classification is based upon the takeoff weight of your drone, including the battery and any accessories. Now, the Neo weighs just 135 grams, so it's definitely a sub 250 gram drone. For drones weighing less than 250 grams, only one Canadian drone regulation truly applies: 900.06. 900.06 applies to all drones, in fact, and I call it the don't do anything stupid rule. No person shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft system in such a reckless or negligent manner as to endanger or be likely to endanger aviation safety or the safety of any person. In other words, stay well away from anywhere manned aircraft are flying or might be flying, and don't fly recklessly around people. In short, don't do anything stupid. While this is the only rule that applies to sub 250 gram drones currently, there are other restrictions you should be aware of. First of all, there are over 100 places across Canada designated as Class F restricted zones, including places like Parliament Hill and Niagara Falls. Beginning in 2025, there will also be drone-only no-fly zones set up across Canada, protecting critical sites such as nuclear power plants. Unless you have permission, you cannot fly any drone, including the Neo, in these areas, even in your own backyard. These no-fly zones are shown in red in the Drone Pilot Canada app, the NRC Drone Site Selection Tool, and the Nav Drone app. But you cannot rely upon the DJI Fly app to stop you from flying in these areas. Typically, the Fly app will give you a warning, but then allows you to just click OK and continue. And if you do so, you are breaking the law and can be fined thousands of dollars. Also, there can be temporary no-fly zones that pop up, often related to wildfires, law enforcement activity, or special events like the Grey Cup. They're raised by notices called NOTAMs and are shown in the Drone Pilot Canada app and Nav Drone app. The NRC Drone Site Selection Tool and DJI Fly app will not show these temporary no-fly zones. Do not fly in these areas. And even if there isn't a NOTAM in effect, do not fly your DJI Neo anywhere near wildfires or any other type of emergency operation. Why? Well, there's a good chance that water bombers or medevac helicopters could be flying in these areas, and you do not want to interfere with their crucial operations. Flying a drone within 10 kilometers of a wildfire can result in a huge fine. You also cannot take off from or land in national parks, most provincial parks, and migratory bird sanctuaries without special permission. The reason is that studies have shown that wild animals and birds can be massively stressed by the high-pitched whining of a drone, even at long distances. Just be kind and stay away from these areas. And on top of all these restrictions, you'll need permission to take off or land from private property and, surprisingly, many municipal parks. Check your local bylaws to be sure. The Drone Pilot Canada app offers handy links and bylaw summaries for the largest communities in Canada. Now, from an aviation perspective, it is permitted to fly over private property and municipal parks, but you're still subject to other rules. You cannot violate people's privacy, for example, by taking pictures of their backyards. And just like any other activity, ground or air, you can't interfere with someone's enjoyment of a public or private place, nor can you harass wildlife, such as ducks on a pond. Be respectful of others. And well, it should probably go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. It is illegal to use a drone to carry contraband into prisons. Don't do that. Here are 6 fundamental guidelines you should keep in mind. Now, they're just my guidelines, not rules, but failure to follow safe guidelines like these may be considered reckless or negligent, and as such could be a violation of that 900.06 regulation. Number 1, keep your drone within visual line of sight and not more than 500 meters away. Here's the catch. The Neo is so small, if you take your eyes off it for a second, you may not be able to spot it again. So at the very least, know where your drone is in the airspace and keep that patch of sky in sight so you'll be better prepared to take appropriate action if something goes wrong. Second, don't fly if you've been drinking or under the influence of drugs. Flying a drone is tricky and can require quick reflexes and good judgment, neither of which is likely if you're drunk or stoned. Even though there are no specific altitude limits for a sub 250-gram drone like the Neo, stay below 120 meters and really low, like 30 meters, if you're anywhere near an airport, in controlled airspace, or anywhere else aircraft or helicopters are landing, taking off, or even operating at low altitudes, such as around emergency areas. Don't fly if the temperature is below -10 or if the wind is gusting over 30 kilometers per hour. You run the risk of losing your Neo, and warranties don't usually apply if you're flying outside the drone's operating limits. Don't fly near or over people who aren't involved with your flight, especially crowds of people. If you're zooming right over people's heads, somebody may get hurt. And the Neo has no obstacle avoidance sensors. So if you're doing one of those autonomous functions like an orbit or even a follow me function, it could easily hit someone. And sure, it may not actually hurt them, but those prop guards do not prevent hair from being caught in the props. Don't ask me how I know. With those guidelines in mind, let's get into some specific questions and answers. Number 1, do I need to register my Neo? No, you don't need to register a drone under 250 grams. In fact, you cannot register a Neo even if you wanted to. But do I need to get a drone pilot certificate? Well, exactly the same story. As long as your drone is under 250 grams, you do not need to be certified. You can fly without any drone pilot certification. But I should mention that the Drone Pilot Association of Canada has a great drone safety course, really informative, whether you're new to drones or experienced, and it's free. Okay, but I looked on the Transport Canada drone safety page and I see all sorts of rules about basic and advanced operations. If I'm flying a Neo, which one am I? Answer: neither one. Basic or advanced operations and all their applicable rules are for drones weighing 250 grams or more. I'm using my Neo to practice flying drones before I buy a larger one. Can I use my Neo to take my flight review for my advanced certificate? No. The drone you fly at a flight review must be registered. And as I mentioned, you cannot register a drone as small as a DJI Neo. I know I should stay away from airports and heliports, but how do I know where they are? Well, there are 3 tools that properly show Canadian airports and heliports: the Drone Pilot Canada app, which I'm the co-developer of, the NavDrone app and its corresponding website, and the NRC Drone Site Selection Tool website. All of these tools have special sub 250 gram drone views that show no-fly zones in red and caution areas in yellow for drones like the Neo. While you can fly in the yellow caution areas, these represent areas where manned aircraft should be expected, so I strongly recommend you stay below 30 meters or 100 feet above ground level. If you stay low, you're not likely going to encounter manned aircraft unless they're landing or taking off. And for that reason, you should never fly, well, at the ends of airport runways. Also, stay away from hospitals, since most hospitals have heliports. And be extremely careful around potential seaplane operations. Please note that the tools I mention here show only registered, certified, or military aerodromes. Planes can also operate from small private airfields like grassy fields that are not shown on any official tools. And of course, helicopters, well, they can land pretty much anywhere. So keep your eyes and ears open. Moving on. Can I fly my Neo in controlled airspace like Class C airspace? Again, yes, you can technically, but controlled airspace is where manned aircraft hang out when landing or taking off from major airports. So air traffic is likely to exist, and you need to be extra careful. And controlled airspace, like Class C, D, or E, starts right at the ground level. Most major cities, in fact, are largely covered in controlled airspace from the ground up. Now, if you're new to aviation or drones, all this jargon like controlled airspace can be bewildering and kind of surprising. So make your life simple and always check one of the simple tools I mentioned to see if you're in controlled airspace. And stay below 30 meters above the ground level if you are. If you're doing real estate shots with your Neo, 30 meters is perfectly fine to get a great perspective on a property. But hang on, the Neo is a DJI drone. Surely I can rely on the DJI FlySafe map to keep me flying safely and legally. No, absolutely not. The DJI FlySafe map does not properly reflect Canadian regulations and is missing many no-fly zones. Please, please, please do not rely upon your drone's built-in map to determine if it is legal to fly. You must check the Drone Pilot Canada app, the Drone Site Selection tool, or the NavDrone app for proper representation of Canadian drone airspace. Here's a simple example. You can unlock your drone in a Class F restricted zone with the tap of a button, but your flight would be absolutely illegal and could bring you a $1,000 fine. So consider any warnings that you get from the DJI Fly app as a strong hint to check one of the other tools I just mentioned before hitting that "Okay, I'll fly" button. I bought the cool new FPV goggles for my Neo. Do I need a spotter? Since the Neo is below 250 grams, you don't need a spotter, also known as a visual observer. That said, having someone else keeping an eye on the area you're flying is always a good idea. When you have goggles on, you may not see someone walk into the area you're flying around in. Hey, when the Neo is flying in an autonomous mode, like follow me or doing a droney, nobody is flying it. So who's responsible if something goes wrong? Well, whoever launched it would be considered the pilot in command in these circumstances. When you initiate one of these flights, consider who or what could get in the way of the drone and know how to abort the flight if something goes wrong. You are responsible. Now, I mentioned real estate videos earlier. Can I use my Neo for commercial drone work like real estate shots? Yes, you can. You can fly your Neo, or well, any drone for that matter, for money in Canada. Unlike in the US, the Canadian drone regulations do not differentiate between commercial or recreational flights. All the same rules, or well, lack of rules, apply. Do privacy laws apply to the Neo? Yes, they sure do. I suggest you read the privacy guidelines on the Transport Canada Drone Safety website or watch my video on the subject. There's a link in the description below. The golden rule here is not to take images of people or their possessions where they would reasonably expect privacy, like in their backyards, for example. Always err on the side of respect and stay away sufficiently such that you can't identify people. Ask permission whenever it's possible. And if someone complains about where you're flying, don't start arguing. Respectfully and safely end your flight. Feel free to discuss the situation once your drone is safely on the ground, but don't get into a heated debate. It's not worth it. So there you have it. Only one true RPAS rule applies in Canada for drones under 250 grams. the don't do anything stupid rule. But there are lots of other no-fly zone cases you need to be aware of, and plenty of other things to consider when you're flying your DJI Neo. I hope you've found this video helpful in explaining the regulations and providing some reasonable guidelines. Lastly, please consider joining the Drone Pilot Association of Canada, representing recreational and small commercial drone pilots. Membership is absolutely free, and we offer a free safety course, great for both new and experienced drone pilots. There's a link in the description below. Thanks for watching. Safe and happy flying.